intend to prove the worth of my invention. Now people were getting antsy, because this was fucking stupid. This dude spent years completely unsuccessfully testing this device, and now somehow he's ready to go with it without a single positive test result under his belt? This is where critics really got word of what was happening and had something to say. One particularly sharp witness butted in and mentioned, besides the total lack of safety considerations and high winds, that the tower itself was still not high enough to perform the deployment correctly. Franz replied, "You are going to see how my 72 kilos and my parachute will give your arguments the most decisive of denials." If there were ever a phrase to represent the 20th century version of "I'll make you eat those words, bitch," I think we just heard it. Finally, after all this mucking about, someone made the logical connection that this man wasn't a genius inventor who was going to astound the world with his creation. Someone finally deduced that this guy was kind of stupid, and his ambitions and obsessive passion were getting to his head. And that man was Gassion. Gassion was a guard who worked at the Eiffel Tower, and as soon as he saw Franz's bulky ass trying to scale the entranceway to get into leaping position, he moved himself in front of the laundry sheet-wearing dunderhead and told him, not today, you ain't, no, you are not doing this, not on my tower, not my Eiffel Tower, bye-bye. Gassion wasn't fully in the wrong here, and in fact he had damn good reason to tell Franz to fuck off. Since Gassion worked at the tower, he witnessed all the previous tests that Franz had done there with the dummies, and made the very obvious observation that none of his stuff worked, and this guy very likely could just be operating on pure blind faith rather than giving a shit about self-preservation. Soon, some superiors gave Gassion a call, and there were lots of shouting and rambling, and Franz was literally noted as highly upset, white-knuckled, and totally rattled over the whole thing, but then Gassion shrugged his shoulders and said, "Alright, okay, you got the permits, you got the clearance, go game over yourself, whatever, I guess." So Franz, the entourage he arrived with, and a cinematographer were allowed to ascend the tower. Franz walked partially up the stairs, turned around to the crowd and said, "See you soon," before he continued his death march. A second cameraman was at the base of the tower, and well, if you watch the footage, you know exactly what happens next. I'm gonna go ahead and narrate it explicitly for all of you blubbering pussies out there who are like, "I don't want to watch someone die." Franz lined a restaurant table up against the railing and peered over to the crowd below, which had about 30 journalists and spectators in it by now. Franz currently was 187 feet above the ground, which is about 13 stories give or take for reference. To check the current wind speed, Franz ripped a page out of a book and threw it in the air, and after seeing it blow around a bunch, which I'm assuming was a scientific declaration, he said, "Yep, the wind's blowing all right," and that was the end of that. The group up on the tower with Franz noted in interviews that he was calm and smiling the entire time before the jump. He did linger on the edge for around a minute, but that was probably him just debating whether or not he should do a sick flip or save that for the second time he jumped. And then, he jumped. And his invention failed to deploy. And he died on impact. Because of the unfortunately restrictive and downright ridiculous rules of this failure of a free expression website, I can't show you raw footage of a man dying. But I can utilize my free expression to help you imagine how it went. It basically happened like this. Now this moment brings up the absolute most interesting part of this entire thing to me. If you pay attention to the footage and read witness testimony, his parachute suit did not deploy correctly. It folded around him like a nice warm hug, except one that would kill you. And it didn't billow out like it was supposed to. And I just can't stop thinking, what if Franz was right? What if he really had perfected his device this time? What if the winds were more cooperative? Or if the prototype actually was functional and worked? What if this dude was on the edge of a breakthrough, finally got his life-saving invention right, and a combination of user error and bad publicity just scrubbed the entire thing from history? And could there be a possibility, an alternate timeline, where even with all of this, Franz landed on the ground below, maybe just broke some bones and lived to further revise his inventions. I almost want to say that could be the case. I really, really do. But there's one more really big problem with the day that Franz chose to jump. See, there's a lot of tidbits in this story that point to the threat posed by strong winds. Franz's friends warned him about it, Franz mentioned he hadn't measured them, and the best test he concocted seconds before the jump for the winds was to throw some paper into them and guess how fast they were going. While the intense wind speed certainly didn't help, the gale velocity might not have been the issue here. Franz's trouble may have been with how cold the winds were. This stunt took place in early February, which is still smack dab within the winter season. The soil that Franz had landed on had frozen well before his jump. Franz impacted the ground on a surface that potentially may have been harder than concrete. If he had just waited for better weather, he could have landed on something maybe much, much softer and maybe saved his life. Now, some of you are going to say that this is far-fetched, and I'm going to fling that Pokemon right back in your face with historical facts. In 1964, a woman named Christiane Quentin, I think that's right, jumped from the Eiffel Tower and also fell about 180 feet, roughly the same distance as Franz. But she survived entirely because she landed on a car that cushioned her fall. It's not the speed of anything that kills you, it's the stopping.
So Mista surviving from the car fall was actually realistic? Holy shit. Our Rocky, you son of a bastard.
Thanks to tundra temperature topsoil taking its time and terminating his test trial. Franz landed on pure, icy, solid ground that hit so hard, his list of fatal injuries was extensive, immediate, impressive, and would all make really good death metal song titles. Crushed right leg, pulverized right arm, exploded skull, shattered spine, bleeding from the mouth, nose, and ears, eyes fixated wide open, and his pupils fully dilated. Franz was really fucking dead. He was rushed to a hospital just so people could feel better, I guess, but he was pronounced dead the instant he arrived. There's also some discussion floating around that Hans actually died of a heart attack immediately after jumping, but from what I could find, it's speculatory and most likely untrue, because even if he went into full cardiac arrest right after jumping, he hit the ground and suffered fatal injuries well before the heart attack would have a chance to kill him completely. Plus, if you watch the footage, you can see one of two things happening. First of all, Franz's body is carried out of the way by a group of onlookers. Now, the stretcher and medical stability was used in regular practice as early as the 18th century, and general medical knowledge was definitely to never move an injured person unless it's absolutely required. The fact that gang of dudes picked this guy up after his skull and spine were obliterated doesn't mean he was injured and being carried off to safety in case a second guy decided to jump and landed on top of him. It meant he was dead as fuck. Second, some spectators went ahead and measured the literal crater left in the ground from the Frenchman's impact. If you left a measurable crater into a patch of frozen ground with your body, things really aren't looking good for you. I unfortunately can't find the measurement they took anywhere, so let's just call it Wile E. Coyote-sized. And then what happened? Well, the press immediately got their grubby paws all over this story, as they tend to do. None of them entertained the idea that this was a self-game over attempt, but all of them rode the idea of this guy was either an idiot or totally insane. As for the people who went with him, one of his friends from the entourage said that Franz needed to make this whole thing a big hoopla in order to help sales of his product and legitimize the device and patents on it. And okay, I see you guys in the back with your fistful of tomatoes and your pitchforks and your torches and your lips deliciously puckered into an O shape so that you can fling out a fat stack of booze. Because you guys want me to tell you about the part where this stunt ruined it for everyone else, don't you? After this little debacle, the French government became very scrupulous when it comes to granting permission to do things on the Eiffel Tower, besides hanging out on the publicly open decks and taking a piss on the side of it. Another inventor named Blanc, who was also making parachutes, was totally denied the request to launch himself in the structure thanks to Franz's fuck-up. Now these days it is a bit of a sport for adrenaline anarchy junkies to do illegal base jumping from the tower just to give a big send-up to my main man F-Dog. Hell, one of them happened a month ago. This stuff still happens. Now, conspiracy theorists would lead you to believe this is more attributed to the fact that base jumping off prominent structures and landmarks is a time-honored, reckless thrill-seeker tradition, but I know deep in my heart they're all doing it to worship at the Church of the Flying Tailor. That was his posthumous nickname, by the way. Franz was given the nickname the Flying Tailor in honor of his stunt. Realistically, he should have been called the Crater Tailor or the Flying Hospice, but whatever. And don't worry, the police did whatever they could to cover their tracks of the whole thing as well. Louis Lapine, the head of the police at the time, said that they had only ever been notified of the parachute experiments taking place with dummies, and had no idea Franz was planning to jump himself. They made a statement that if they knew that he was actually going to leap from the tower, they never would have allowed him up there. That's right, they made an official statement saying that they would have made an exception if he was cooler and not crazy. To directly quote Louis Lapine, not only did that big blubbering pussy not even do a flip, but he hesitated for like a whole minute before he jumped. What a fucking loser. I would have gone up and jumped twice by the time he did all that goofy shit. The only upside of this whole stunt is that I got to steal one of his vertebrae when no one was looking. It was poking out of the base of his neck, so I just pried it off with a wrench and put it in my pocket during all the chaos. I keep it in a jar of formaldehyde and it gives me sweeter dreams. One time I dreamt I was the president and my first executive order was to cancel all homework forever and take 200 trips to Disneyland a year. God bless America. No, Hugbees didn't write this quote for me 100 years after my death. Why do you ask? So let's cut to the modern day, where this trivia factoid becomes a fun, digestible nugget thanks to the fact it happened a long time ago to not upset anyone who doesn't like death and stuff. Now, I'm sure many of you guys watching drew parallels from this story to Lawn Chair Larry, the guy who sailed across California in a lawn chair tied to some weather balloons, who I made an incredible video on that I'll go ahead and link in the description. In that video, and minor spoilers because I know you're going to watch it since I make the literal best videos on this entire website, I praise Larry for combining reasonable safety prep with a sly skirting of some silly laws to accomplish his dream in a way that realistically could only end up harming himself, if anyone. But in this scenario, I gotta say, I think Franz is kind of just a fucking idiot. The dude definitely seems to have been caught up in the fervor and excitement of the whole spectacle, which caused him to neglect common sense and safety measures at every turn. Now, I know what it's like to be in a whirlwind of attention. I once spent 6 years running a cult where people thought I was Jesus Christ's brother, and I ended it because I just had too much money. Like, too much. I couldn't reasonably spend it all. But if you're gonna go through with stunts like this, you've gotta at least do the appropriate prep work. Likening an impulsive jump to flimsy excuses like needing to drum up attention or needing to legitimize patents is just foolish and putting flash before substance. You know what would have helped sell your idea better, Franz? If it fucking worked. Even so, I get wanting to be a high flyer throughout life, and I'm actually a big fan of taking life-demolishing risks in the name of greatness. But how fucking hard would it have been to build an old-timey crash pad at the bottom of the tower, or attach yourself to some sort of harness or a bungee cord type thing? Anything. Now, I can't exactly say I know what would have been done back in the 1900s to protect wannabe Batman here from dying, but I do know that something could have been done instead of absolutely nothing. His friends could have tackled his ass to the ground before he jumped. The guard at the guard tower could have defied orders when he realized that the situation was way more complicated than he could possibly make out. The police could have interviewed him before organizing the perimeter, and upon finding out that he was going to go off himself over the rail, they could have given him a fat middle finger, especially since they claimed after his death they never would have let something like this happen in the first place if they hadn't known that it was going to be him jumping. Boy, isn't that a convenient fucking excuse. This whole story wraps up like a cascading event of pure bystander effect. People knew this was going to be a shit show, but through a combination of shirking responsibility fully onto the man at the center of attention and belief that maybe this just might work, no one did anything. And a fanatical man died in, well, on the plus side, probably the exact way he'd want to die. I do propose that Franz could have survived under more favorable wind or temperature conditions. This whole thing was a farce from the start, and a risk that definitely didn't need to be taken in any way. I mean, everyone saw that while this dude did initially have successful prototypes in the beginning with dummies, he didn't have a single successful test with his newest compact design or off of the Eiffel Tower. Why on God's green earth would anyone let him go through with this? I just realized how ironic it is that I said God's green earth, because that's what did him in. Well, I seem to be at the point of the video where I give my own analytical take on the whole thing, so there's probably not much left to say, right? All I've got left in my notes here is that the film of Franz's Plunge has an IMDb page. Why isn't that just super? He even plays himself in the movie. I thought he'd be played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because that guy's in everything, but I'm happy to see that he stepped up to the plate for his first acting gig. Oh. You know what? Speaking of IMDb and all that, there's one more thing I gotta tell you. I lied straight to your face. Put up the IMDb page of the other video. Franz Reichelt's death isn't the first death ever recorded on film. This topic's actually under a big amount of debate and scrutiny as to what is the first death ever recorded on film. Many people think it's a self-terminating jump of a New York City woman in 1938 that was broadcast internally to the NBC broadcasting station because they had a cameraman coincidentally able to capture the shot while he was out testing equipment. But the existence of Franz's film outright disproves that because 1912 comes before 1938. And that's really obvious, and a grade schooler could tell you that, and it proves that people just don't fucking Google anything whatsoever. But the trend continues even to Franz's film. Franz's death was reported as the first ever caught on film as a viral internet fact, and still is to this day. But that's wrong. Sort of. The title more likely but debatably belongs to William Carr, thanks to his execution being filmed all the way back in 1897. The story of William Carr in itself is pretty lengthy, but here's the spark notes. William Carr was a child murderer who was sentenced to hanging. A filmographer by the name of Frederick Guth volunteered in filming the execution. He filmed about 10 minutes of the entire affair and showcased it at tons of local theaters and phonograph stores. This film got a bunch of attention back in the day. I mean, it was the Faces of Death of its era. And then, poof, it's gone. It is just gone, probably destroyed forever. Keep in mind, back then, 10 minutes of film was over 1,000 feet of film. And keeping that stuff super pristine and neat and ready for the future just wasn't in the cards for century-old preservation techniques. There's some old photos and stills of the event that exist to prove that it actually happened and was recorded, and there's also tons of articles and witness testimony verifying the legitimacy of the whole thing, but does that count? If we define the first death ever recorded on film as it meaning someone took a video of it, then yes, case closed. William Carr was the first and Franz Reichelt was very likely second until further information finds more old-timey tragedies for us to giggle at, but from what I could find, those are the first two. But if we define first death ever recorded on film to mean currently recorded on film right now, as in there is film of it that exists and it is the oldest film that exists of this subject, then Franz wins, because there is no surviving footage of the car hanging. It's a question of whether the act of being filmed or the state of existing on film qualifies for the answer we're looking for. Either way, I have just embarrassed quite a handful of fun fact know-it-all contemporaries, and that's good enough for me. And speaking of death, I know I would just die if I didn't check out Hugbee's Gamer Mode, my brand new gaming channel that you can find linked in the description right here on YouTube. Oh man, is it a silly time full of great stuff you want to see, including regular uploads to tide you over while I work on big projects and help you forget about the fact that each and every one of us is going to die no matter what. Go check it out, subscribe to it, like this video, comment with your favorite type of cookies down below to confuse everyone who hasn't seen the rest of the video yet. Make me a multimillionaire so I can spend it on things to improve your life with as well. Retweet all my tweets and post my stuff on Reddit. Do everything in your fucking power to further the cult of Hugbees, and you will be rewarded in the afterlife by me personally, and I am allowed to sell out like this because I do it ironically. I really don't care. I mostly just want to make sure you found this video entertaining. But I do like money. I like money a lot. And don't forget to try out World of Tanks with the invite code COMBAT and the link in the description. Hurry! World War III might break out at any minute, and you don't want to look like an idiot, do you? I love bottle movies. Okay, fine, I'll tell you what a bottle movie is, you uncultured swine. Bottle movies are movies that mostly stay confined to one singular location, such as 12 Angry Men, Rear Window, Lock, 127 Hours, Clue, Buried, and that one terrible episode of Family Guy. Let's not forget, of course, indie classics that follow the trend of just one-word titles named after boring objects like Cube, Exam, and Circle. I'll dive into why I love bottle movies so much, what separates a well-written one from a confusing mess, and what the series I'm about to show you does right and wrong as a bottle movie later. But for now, it's time to talk about The Vault. Ah, shit. Look, it's named after another boring object again. The Vault is an episodic web series created for YouTube and released between 2010 and 2014, co-created by Aaron Hahn and Mario Miscioni. Or Aaron Han and Mario Mischione, or some other way to pronounce those two names. The show is pretty damn under the radar, clocking in at a rough total of 2.3 million views for the entire series, with the highest viewed episode only garnering 313,000 views. That's over the course of 10 years. By today's virality standards, that's pretty much nothing. And that's why I'm here, to once again introduce you to something that I haven't stopped thinking about for weeks that most of you will probably forget about once you finish watching this video. And look, it's such a great show that the final episode on the channel is an advertisement for a completely unrelated movie. Alright, fuck it, enough stalling, let's get started. The prologue to The Vault is divided into 3 parts, and to me, they're better trailers than they are a prologue.
Hello and welcome to Under the Super Scope, where we take an in-depth look at some of the most famous games of all time, work at exactly what makes them so good, and whether they still hold up today. It doesn't matter if they're 5 or 35, all we want to know is why these games are fun, and what better game to take episode 2 than one that redefined an entire genre, Resident Evil 4. May sound simple now, but that idea of putting the camera over the shoulder makes so much sense for aiming. Before this, games would just have floating reticules or change the entire perspective. Resident Evil 4 popularized was now become a standard of any third-person game. Sure, some other games also took in the idea, but when you're as miraculous as Resident Evil 4, the entire industry will start to take notice. But of course, the genre didn't stop evolving after Resident Evil 4, and with games like Gears of War only a year later, the shooter genre started to get a bit more flexible. Even Resident Evil 6 adopted the evolution of its peers. The long question I'll put forward is this: is this evolution an enhancement? Well, in a lot of cases, yeah, sure. But for Resident Evil 4, this limited third-person gameplay has a ton of perks. See, the best games have limitations, and they relish in them. For instance, let's briefly look at double jumps and platformers. They give you more accuracy, more control, and they make landing those tricky jumps easier. So why doesn't Super Mario Bros. Have one? Well, because every level in Mario is built around that one particular jump mechanic. There isn't a pit you can't clear, or an enemy you can't stop, and not once do you think to yourself, man, I wish I could double jump right now. Mario relishes in its jumping limitations in every single aspect of its level and enemy design, and it's the exact same thing to Resident Evil 4. If we slapped on joystick controls, suddenly the whole game just doesn't work anymore. Every single enemy in Resident Evil 4 understands that you can't move and shoot. This is very deliberate. Notice how from a distance these guys will sprint towards you in a range, only to slow down to this creepy demonic swagger. The game may have abandoned a lot of the horror aspects of the series, but one thing it didn't shake was tension. You have this constant decision to make. Is it time to run, or is it time to shoot? You read your environment, read the situation, and decipher the moment where you turn around and give them hell. Everything is designed around this stop and pop flow. That's why the enemies slow down when they near you. If they always chase you at full speed, then you'll never have time to reload your guns or stop to aim. You need that slight head start, and what better time to slow them down than at the most horrific moment, when they're right next to you. If we just went around like this, suddenly the whole foundation of this game is gone. That calculated player risk of knowing when to shoot is so important, and sometimes games need their limitations. Breath of the Wild with the stamina meter offers a greater sense of player accomplishment when you finally scale a tall mountain. Limiting the player to 6 Pokemon incentivizes party balance, and sacrificing movement for aiming your weapon is a key pillar of what makes Resident Evil 4 so enjoyable. All of your favorite games are purposely limited in one area or another, and while options are good, the best games are the ones that provide these options by expanding upon one limited function. In Resident Evil 4, that function is your weapon. The gunplay in Resi 4 is phenomenal to say the least. You feel every single blow in Resi 4, and this makes even the most vanilla weapon satisfying to use. If I shoot an enemy in the shoulder, they'll stagger and shake away the pain. If I shoot their legs, they'll collapse and buy me some time. And if I shoot their head or kneecaps, you get the best thing of them all: melee attacks. Now this is where the tone of Resident Evil 4 is really set in place. When you're roundhouse kicking infected villagers while passing through oncoming attacks with invincibility frames, you know this is no longer a horror game, but it is still about survival. It gives Resident 4 this tense, arcade-like action, which is further exemplified in the infinitely replayable Mercenaries mode. This does away with story and rotational pacing and just crunches on pure combat. Combat's only a small pillar of what makes this game so masterful, but it's astonishing that it holds up on that alone. Hey, they can make a whole game out of the Mercenaries and skimp on content. Wouldn't that be funny? As you make your way through the game, you're not only progressing in a linear sense, but you're also progressing as a character. Your inventory will grow. You can upgrade your weapons in any way you want. And I think this is part of what makes Resident Evil 4 so replayable. Not only is the gunplay masterful, but you always feel like you're working towards something. Best of all though, no matter how strong your gun is or how many you have, the way you use them and how you play mirrors everything you learn in only the first 5 minutes of the game. It doesn't take long at all to learn what's essentially every mechanic in Resident Evil 4, and it's all done with an invisible tutorial. Never does a message show on the screen saying, hold R to aim. Never does Leon mutter to himself out loud, this game. And that's not to say those kind of tutorials are bad, but Resident Evil 4 teaches the very same thing silently through level design. There's never a waypoint in this game, and that's something again Resident Evil 6 completely messes up on. In this linear hallway with only one direction, why am I being pointed in the way to go? All I focus on is this arrow, and when you take that way, you start to actually acknowledge your surroundings. And there's no waypoint or even an on-screen map. The sense of atmosphere can be so strong. And this is something Dark Souls does really well too. You just have to ensure your level design is still intelligent enough to execute the right way. And Resident Evil 4's first chapter, 1-1, has a striking resemblance to another famous 1-1. I'm going to show you both levels at the same time and see if you can spot any patterns. Super Mario Bros. Opens with this calm and safe screen. Here I can test the controls and work out that B is run and A is jump. I can try going left, only to figure out the screen doesn't scroll that way. Once I'm ready to go, I'm met with a roadblock, a Goomba. I'm forced to learn the jump mechanic and overcome this Goomba. And once the game has accepted I know how to jump, it's time to iterate and expand upon that key mechanic. Next, we have multiple pipes all differing in height. What this is teaching us is we can jump in different ways. If we hold down A for longer, we'll jump higher, and we'll also learn that momentum carries into our jumps. The faster I move, the further I jump. Now what Mario has is a lot of space to continue to teach, expand, and iterate upon the basics. He'll run and jump through basic designs with 1 or 2 enemies occasionally occupying the screen. Now here comes the climactic ending for Mario. 4 Goombas. The most we've seen together so far, but it's nothing we aren't prepared for with everything we've learned. So let's quickly recap from the perspective of Resident Evil 4. Empty space with no threat to learn the controls. Pushed in the right way by trying to turn back. One-on-one encounter with a Ganado we have to defeat to progress. Iterate with 3 more Ganados while mixing and running and shooting. Moving in different ways. Space to continue to teach, and then a culmination of everything you've learned. In this brief segment, we've already become masters of this game. We know to balance running and gunning. We'd learned that in only our second encounter. We know about melee attacks, probably by accident through trial and error, and we've been taught to explore through visual design. Mario has these tantalizing floating blocks, and Resident Evil 4 has boxes that like to shape anything else on screen which draws attention to them. Of course, Resi 4's one has a final act to it after the village encounter, but the core fundamentals of teaching remain the same as Super Mario Bros. This is essentially a 3D version of it, and with that come a few original ideas to keep the player on the right path. What Resident Evil 4 does a lot of is camera framing and contextual cutscenes. Right at the start, the camera faces us forwards as that's the direction to progress, and though we can turn around, we're quickly told that's not the right way to go. As we move forward, we get a cutscene showing us the inside of a house. This doesn't necessarily give us story, but it gives us a goal to see what's inside the house. This is further encouraged by the camera, which is now flipped towards the door. If we continue to ignore this and try to go the other way, we'll find a trap blocking our path. Lesser games like Resident Evil 6 rely on waypoints to guide the player. This is such poor visual design. The level should be smart enough to not only look like a convincing world, but one with a clear direction. It's a tricky balance, but Resident Evil 4 always pulls it off. It's not just visual cues either, sound is just as important. Shortly after Leon's killed 4 Ganados, we hear the whimpering of a dog. His colours don't necessarily stand out and the camera doesn't focus on him, but the audio design is so distinct that you're still drawn to this creature that's hardly even visible in the camera frame. What follows is a commentary to humanized characters, where to make them seem less like murderous psychopaths. Have them rescue a cat out of a tree, or in this case, save a dog. If you do this, you'll be rewarded for it later. There's no point telling you this. Again, Leon doesn't mutter, "Hey, if I throw this dog a ball, maybe you'll throw me one later." You just do it because the sound design draws attention to this vulnerable creature. Sound is usually used as a warning in Resident Evil 4. You can hear the 3D direction of enemies and soundtrack cues that you know when it's okay to relax. The melody of the Merchant in particular is this relaxing score that lets you know it's okay to let your guard down. Though we've nailed the mechanics early on, how we expand upon them continues to be taught through the very same methods: visual design, sound design, and contextual cutscenes. Let's fast forward all the way to 3-1. As we step forward, a cutscene triggers to show us 2 enemies preparing a device that launches projectiles. There's a red barrel next to them. Then we're back in control, and the projectile's being launched, but it won't hit us as it's too far away. But it does hit a nearby structure and completely demolishes it. So what have we learned in those few seconds? Well, we know the location of the enemy, clear idea of how to take them down, being the red barrel, and we know their shots are powerful enough to take down stone structures. From here, we'll continue forward in a clear direction, while being sure to avoid projectiles using both sound and shadows. Now iteration kicks in. There are more of them. We also see what we saw in the cutscene, red barrels. If we take cover in this small structure over here and occasionally pop out, we can deal with them one by one. Stuff like this happens all the time in Resident Evil 4. In 3-4, enemy from above throws an explosive that won't hit us, but it tells us he's there and to look out for him. Here's a giant death machine accelerating towards me, and a brief cutscene shows us 2 enemies spamming it. Now I know what to aim for. Here's a ceiling coming down to crush me, but the camera is framed in a way that emphasizes these red patches, which of course we shoot because that's what we're taught to do with shiny things. In fact, most of the game's cutscenes really don't have anything to do with the story. Most are to set up gameplay possibilities. At the end of the game, after you've found the Krauser, you'll naturally be quite low on ammo, and lo and behold, you're joined by a fighter jet who does all the shooting for you. The cutscene establishes it, you collect ammo along the way, and then unfortunately get shut down during a cutscene. So what did this add to the story? Well, beyond building a little more anger towards Sadler, nothing. This was purely contextual for the gameplay segment. So is this, so is this, so is this, and so is this. In other instances, the game uses colour to emphasise importance or interactivity. We've already touched upon red barrels, but how about our first interaction with blue medallions? Now these are hidden around the game, and shooting enough of them will grant us a free weapon. But how do we learn about them? Well, as soon as we enter the screen, your eyes will immediately focus on the colour blue amongst the browns and greys. The blue poster is of course the primary draw, but you'll also likely see a smaller, sparkling object above it. Of course we shoot it, because that's what we do in this game. Now the poster does explain what these medallions are, but if you're like me, you just wouldn't have even bothered to read it. I already know to look out for them because now my eye is drawn to the vibrant colour blue, and this mysterious counter came up telling me there's more of them. Even boxes and crates follow this philosophy. They're a much brighter shade of brown, which makes them stand out. When we first meet a Geraldo, Johnny's golden bells stand out. What the cutscene shows us is after some shot, he doesn't seem to track us like other enemies. Soon you discover he responds to sound, and suddenly those bright golden bells almost ring themselves. And then there's other instances of vigilate. Resi 4 never requires you to move the camera, as turning is handled just by moving left and right. So to help depth perception, these swinging blades have an equal line on the ground to show you exactly where you should be standing. And again here, the camera moves automatically to show us the best angle for these moving pillars. It's a far cry from the fixed camera of classic Resident Evil games, but Resident Evil 4 makes very intelligent use of its angles. It knows when to pan out, it knows what to focus on, and it knows where to position you after a cutscene. At the time, having camera control wasn't at all popular with Japanese players, and so many Japanese developed games like Devil May Cry and Metal Gear Solid 2 continue to ignore the right stick for camera control. And there's a case to argue, all three of these games relish in that limitation. We can move the camera, but it's not a huge help. Actually, in moments like this where I'm being chased by a mob, I don't need to turn around to see if they're still following me. For two reasons. One, I can hear them with the sound design. And two, the visual design tells me they're still following, as Ashley is looking back for me. Now let's talk a bit more about Ashley. Escort missions, I feel, are given an unwarranted poor reputation. Sure, there are some games that execute the practice poorly, but that's true of any mechanic. Now, we don't partner with Ashley until 1.5 hours into the game. In that time, we've taken down a village, an outpost, a giant sea monster. We've learned not to rely on headshots as they now spout these giant tentacly things. We've faced a pack of wolves and toppled a giant ogre. It's safe to say Leon is practically a superhero at this point, and we're more than comfortable with everything the game has thrown at us. And here's where things are grounded. Ashley makes this newly found expert player vulnerable. She's an extra body to look out for, an extra person to heal. Importantly though, Ashley doesn't limit Leon in any way. Everything we learned is still the same, and she'll even look behind us while aiming, or if we're parted, she'll duck within our line of sight. What Ashley does is provide an extra layer of tension to a player who's become too comfortable with the game. Suddenly you may start taking things slower. Maybe you aren't going to run through a horde of enemies, as your hitbox is essentially twice as large. And if you really don't like Ashley, you can just put her in a bin and come back for her later. And that's kind of the interesting part of Ashley. Upon replaying the game, she accompanies us far less frequently than I remember. In fact, most of the time it's just Leon on his own, and the game is really intelligent about when to separate the two. Basically, segments with fast enemies do not feature Ashley. There's a segment where Leon and Lewis take on a horde of infected as they stay locked in a house. Ashley is nowhere to be found, and she shut herself in a cupboard upstairs. And she just so happens to stay outside before the boss fight Chief Mendez. She gets captured at the end of 2-3, and what do you know, the first enemy encounter of 3-1 is this fast, invisible insect monster. Oh, and she just so happens to get captured again before an encounter with the very same enemies. In fact, she's captured by them. Ashley's never present when you face these guys. Ashley achieves her goal of grounding the player, and she's never present in a moment which would be a hindrance. I also like how she does this when you shoot down enemies with a cable car. Nothing big, just a nice detail. Only potential design flaw with Ashley is if you have a rifle during this segment, things can get a little tricky, and you may accidentally kill her. Being over-encumbered sucks, right? It's a chore in games like Skyrim where you picked up too much stuff and then suddenly have to sort through your inventory. So why does Resident Evil 4 get it right? Well, I think a part of it comes down to the hands-on approach. The weapons menu is essentially inside a briefcase, and you're manually able to squeeze in wherever you can. This causes you to understand the selectiveness. You can't just bring along 5 rocket launchers and kill everything in one hit. You may sometimes even have to sell off a beloved weapon and you simply don't have the space. Every time you visit the merchant, you're making these conscious decisions of, do I use my money to buy a larger case, buy new weapons, or upgrade my existing ones? And maybe this is all incentivized from being so involved in the process that you're committed to play along with it. The only issue here is I would like some quick D-pad mapping for the weapons, especially later in the game, when you'll be opening up your menu a lot to change weapons, and it can get a bit tedious. More than maybe any other game, Resident Evil 4 knows when to change things up. It is the king of pacing. Throughout this adventure, we disrupt lovely villagers just trying to have a nice time. We sail the seas, we have bombastic moments full of terror, hordes of infected. Then we have quiet moments. Then the blue flame of the merchant, where we know we're safe. upgrade our weapons and buy new ones, and then we're being chased by a giant robot version of one of the main villains. It knows exactly when to let off, when to let you just soak in the environment and catch your breath, and when to throw you into the deep end. From beginning to end, we consistently see new forms of enemies and new situations for older ones. Here's a new form of evolving a simple concept. There's a trait line here that I should shoot from a distance, otherwise I'll take damage from the explosion. Oh look, the explosion killed those birds, and those birds dropped money. Fast forward to later, and oh look at these unsuspecting birds just lying around. Now we're in the money. Then we take the concept a step further on actual enemies. They're also neatly lined up here. Just makes sense. And again here, only this time they're further away, so I have a real chance of missing. The game's essentially split into 3 acts.
Just
Village,
2 more cycles or
Castle,
something.
and Island. I often hear the sentiment that the quality dips after the village, but I disagree. I mean, sure, the village is one of the finest openings of any video game, but would a 10-hour adventure set solely there continue to engross? I'm not so sure. Resident Evil 4 is a game about building upon a foundation, and to dwindle in one location kind of goes against every other aspect of the game. Even when you revisit areas, they're different. Unlike previous Resi games, there's some open areas and backtracking. Resi 4 is very linear, but it never really feels like that because environments move around. Here's the village on 3 different occasions during 3 different chapters. Sure, we're back in the same area, each time we come and go through a different door. Watch how it plays out here, and here, and here. Instances like this make the game feel like more than just a string of levels and along the lines of a real, fully connected world. It's done again with the castle, where we need 3 pieces of this ornament to open a gated door. We don't go around on a fetch quest to find these pieces. We carry on as normal and just push onward. We pick up the pieces via normal means, never backtracking, and eventually we loop back into the room from a previously locked door. And again here, we need a medallion to open this door. We find another path, go through an elaborate underground mine, where we somehow end up on this minecart roller coaster, which then manages to loop us all the way around the map back to where we first started. And then we finish off by picking up the medallion and opening the door. When we can picture how things connect, we stop viewing them as segments of a game and start appreciating the context behind the environment. And Resi 4 is full of context. Sure, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense how an unarmed person can drop ammo or then throw their axe and somehow pull out another one, but it finds the line between fun and immersion. Check out this set piece here. We run along the rim of this dam without really thinking anything of it, and as we carry on, we find a path blocked by a waterfall. So we carry on going the only clear direction we can until we find a lever. Now let me show you an edited version of what we need to see purely from a gameplay perspective. Now let me show you what we actually see. The game loves explaining its mechanisms and how things work, and it makes me appreciate the level design that much more. There's even a side mode with separate ways that's further context to the story. Here you play as Ada Wong on an adventure parallel to Leon's, and it explains things like why the bell rang during the village sequence, what this dashboard was intended for, and why Lewis leaves the house after the onslaught. I never really questioned any of these holes during the main story, but it's really satisfying to understand the context behind everything. Going back to the village, castle, island theory, it's almost a disservice to generalize the game's content under such small labelings, because this is all village, this is all castle, and this is all island. Just like the enemy, weapon, and puzzle variety, the locations change so frequently, and as does the tone. The island may be one of the most bombastic playgrounds the game has to offer, but then you hear these eerie moans. The regenerators. The build-up to this encounter is incredibly tense as we explore the testing map full of discarded experiments. Every single time you enter a room, you expect one to jump to life, and then when we finally see one, boy is it terrifying. Usually cutscenes introduce new elements. This is purely in-game, and the island plays with our expectations again. We're told that the lack of music means that we're safe. Then we encounter this enemy in pure silence, and then moments after, Oven Man. The island is also home to whatever you class this as. It's certainly a broad location. Resident Evil 4 is packed with ideas, and the pacing of each one is executed perfectly, but at the forefront of it all are the simple mechanics you learned over the first few minutes. I don't personally think good games can age. I believe genres can evolve, and graphics may become dated. The best games are not like Resident Evil 4 that dedicate themselves to their limitations. I mean, I've spent dozens of hours just in the mercenaries mode, which should in theory be the most limited and repetitive area in the game. Yet after 13 years, it still feels as fresh as it ever did. Fun doesn't age, so while a lot of modern shooters may have new standards, how many of them will we still be playing a decade later? How many of them are truly designed around their limitations, and is the structure housing those limitations intelligent? While Resident Evil 4 is so intelligent, not only is it mechanically excellent, but every single element is pure fun. There's no perfect game, but if I had to pinpoint some of the fewest flaws, this would make the cut. Resident Evil 4 still holds up, and is one of the greatest games of all time.
No way, Leon!
Ray!
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your
Right hand comes off.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and be sure to subscribe to Game Explained for more episodes from Under the Super Scope and other things gaming too. See you next week. Bye. Actually, no, hold on. Reload animations. Okay, now we can go. Bye, everyone. Hit the subscribe thing.
I like the reload animations in the remake better. The classic games. Not sure about 5 and 6, but every gun in the classic games are just reloaded on a fixed time. But at the very least, around Resident Evil 7, and then the remakes that came after, all reload differently now. Like magazines always instantly load to the fastest, but like the non-magazine ones, I like it. It's a subtle, realistic touch that really didn't need to be included. And I like how the game is balanced around the varying reload speeds. Yeah, the original RE4 is awesome. Maybe I'll do a professional playthrough one of these days. Wow, that was a lot of damage. I have enough space. I want beef fry because Rocket Engine is just the best. So it turns out those overworld skills having 0 TP cost is intentional, which I really don't agree with. I like most of the changes, but some of the changes are just a bit jarring for me. They were definitely designed by a player, not a game designer. Not tooting my own horn, I just... As someone who plays various games and mods and indie games and stuff, and just someone who likes overanalyzing fiction in general, I get... Just by looking through... I mean, obviously, my accuracy might be above 50%, but not by much. But I can guess a lot about a person, just through their fiction. Just through the art that they decide to contribute to the world. Like, for example, I can safely assume someone's, the gender of a mangaka just by the way chapters are written and stuff. Even if they don't show their gender or lie about it outright to the public. Like, for example, Girlfriends, a manga I recently just finished reading. Slow paced, but I liked it ultimately, I suppose. Anyway, it is unequivocally that the artist of that manga is a girl. It's a gained skill. It's not something only I can do. I'm sure other people can do it as well, maybe even better. And really, this isn't a skill you should brag about or try to have. It's just something I inevitably gained due to my personality. Anyway, there was a particular chapter that mentioned periods, and that's not something a male author typically would, right? Except for maybe Araki. I totally see Araki. He's a freaking control freak who does a lot of research for all of the things that matter the least. And I love it. Oops. But yeah. Something like that is not something a man would know about, obviously. Maybe if they aren't single, who knows. But let's be real here, a mangaka who's married, unless you're Inari-sensei, fat chance you'd get a girl like her, like she has. I completely forgot about Umag. Let's go get her better stuff. I need to compromise somehow. I hate that she's a frontliner, but she's not allowed to have very good equipment. Alright, looks like I'm doing one more run through. I still don't know how to get to the next floor, which is part of the reason why I'm just grinding. But once I'm done with grinding, I'm just gonna scour every part of this godforsaken labyrinth that I can until I eventually come across the right path.
When I was watching Snyder's Justice League, I had an opinion.
Fuck.
See, when it comes to the argument around whether or not Snyder's Batman is a good incarnation of the character, the argument has truly run around in circles. Here's how the average conversation's gone so far. If someone wants to explain why this version of Batman is a bad incarnation of the character, their main point, and quite often their only point, boils down to Snyder's Batman is a ruthless killer, therefore this version of Batman sucks. And when the disgruntled fan uses that attack in an argument against a Snyder fan, it almost always turns out to be not very effective. And it was when I was watching the Snyder Cut I finally realised exactly why that is. It's because in this film, Batman kills absolutely nobody. Snyder fixed the #1 complaint people had about his character. So why is it that in this film he still comes across as, I don't want to say boring, because that's only but such a thoroughly unentertaining character to follow relative to the other depictions we've seen? It's because while other incarnations like Nolan's trilogy, or the animated movies, or the animated series, or the Batman Arkham games, or the elderly version of him from The Dark Knight Returns, while all of those incarnations have delved deep into the Batman universe, truly understood what makes him as a character great, and using that understanding, have allowed his character to shine to his fullest potential. The simple truth is, Zack Snyder hasn't just not captured that potential, he's barely captured a percent of it. And that's exactly what the last portion of this video is about, where just like I did with my Star Wars and Last of Us 2 videos, I'm going to be getting a Batman-focused rewrite of the whole DCEU. But okay, let's cut to it. Does this Batman look badass? Yes, he looks incredibly badass. Is his voice modulator the single coolest sounding Batman voice ever put to film? Undeniably. If there were a fight between all of the Batman incarnations, would this Batman easily win? Of course he would. Partly because the other incarnations don't have guns. Okay, look, that was low-hanging fruit. That was a joke. Kind of? Well, when it comes to those three things, this Batman easily wins. However, when it comes to everything else, this Batman easily loses. This is the heart of why so many fans have been disgruntled with this depiction of the character. It's not because Batman's a killer, or at least that's one smaller part of a larger problem. It's because Batman is so much more than what we've seen so far in the DCEU. And Snyder has failed to realise the majority of Batman's potential. But this isn't going to be a controversial thing for me to say at all. It's because fundamentally, Zack Snyder doesn't understand Batman's character. I made a video trying to convince you guys that the end of Avengers Endgame was bad. Alright, like I'm no stranger to getting drowned in dislikes, but give me your time, reserve your judgment, and I will convince you that this incarnation of Batman truly was subpar. And if I somehow don't, your money back, I guess. I'll give you a full refund for the cost of watching today's video. But in order for me to explain why Snyder's Batman was bad, I have no choice but to make this next part of the video a breakdown of why Batman to begin with truly is a fantastic character, and why when his character is done right, the entertainment value he brings to the table is truly through the roof.
I'm done with the grinding.
So I expect that a healthy amount of my life consuming Batman-related fiction, and after giving it years of thought, I think I've distilled exactly how Batman's character works. And the truth is, I don't think there's one reason why Batman works. There are, in fact,
I want to try Adderley as a healer.
intellect, integrity, and physical prowess. And I will be elaborating a lot on this later on. I'm just laying out the bare bones of it here, but fundamentally, every good Batman story attacks and tests these four cornerstones of his character, and when they do so, his character is at his most entertaining. What really sells this is the fact that Batman is the kind of character you can pit against any foe, like absolutely any foe, and yet convincingly right into the position of the underdog, yet also an underdog with a believable chance of winning. As Batman is a natural underdog character, it's easy to put him in a desperate situation, to push him to his absolute limits, and in doing so, you provide a trove of wonderful opportunities to test the four cornerstones of his character: resolve, intellect, integrity, and physical prowess. Like, that is the formula for creating good Batman fiction. Like, think of your favourite Batman focus story, and the odds are that it does exactly this. And what's absolutely worth mentioning here, and what supports this theory of mine, and it is just a theory, feel free to modify it or shoot it down in the comments, is that most of Batman's villains actually play into this whole idea, because almost all of his villains are fundamentally designed to attack one of these four qualities. Bane, Killer Croc, and Deathstroke all challenge Batman's physical prowess, right? They all challenge his fighting skill. Riddler challenges intellect. Poison Ivy and Scarecrow challenge his resolve. Like, Batman needs a strong willpower to resist those two. And finally, Joker and Ra's al Ghul challenge his integrity. And frankly, that's why, if you ask me, that's why Joker and Ra's are Batman's two most compelling villains, because they're such good foils for him.
I have so many healers.
What I think is not the only one, but
Oh my.
is the most important
Oh my.
of what defines Batman.
Even Chaos are heals.
That's the bare bones of how I think Batman's character works so well. And let's flesh this out. Let's take a deep
Now this is what I call a team of all
see
time.
how well other Batman fiction handles them, and then compare that to Snyderverse and see how well they compare. So I often get asked by aspiring writers what's the supposed secret to how I break down stories the way I do. And the secret is, there is no secret. You just need to do two things. A, write a ton of fiction yourself, and B, fill your head with as much knowledge of the craft as you can. And if you want to be a good writer, you have to do both. And today, I'm going to tell you about something you'll find quite useful here. Because roses are red, Snyder's Batman is deplorable, you're in for a treat, because today's video is sponsored by Audible. So I've been using Audible for years at this point, not just because it's got a ridiculous amount of good fiction on it, not just because it has a great number of audiobooks on creative writing that I found valuable, but because it's just such a fantastic way to optimize your time. Whether you're commuting to work or doing the dishes or taking your dog for a walk or simply playing a game, any time where your hands are occupied but your brain isn't, those are all perfect moments where you can start an audiobook and improve yourself by learning something new or simply escaping into a great story. So if you want to know how I've been using Audible recently, over the past week I've been binge listening to Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson while playing RuneScape. Yes, I know I still play RuneScape. Yeah, make of that what you will. But seriously, if you want to improve your writing craft, there are a ton of resources on Audible for you to learn. Personally, as well as Mistborn, I've been listening to Writing Great Fiction, Storytelling Tips and Techniques by James Hines, and it's dense with information, and I found it invaluable. If you're a writer, I'd highly recommend you pick this one up. And if this all sounds good to you, then all you have to do to get started is click my link in the description. That's audible.com/closerlook, or text closer look to 500 and get a 30-day trial, plus a credit good for any audiobook you like on their platform. You get it all totally free. And hey, if you don't like the service, you can cancel the first 30 days and you'll get a free audiobook out of it. So what do you have to lose? Again, please click my link in the description, audible.com/closerlook, or text closerlook to 500 and get a free trial along with a credit good for any audiobook you like on their platform. And I'd recommend Writing Great Fiction by James Hines as a good place to start. Anyway, back to the video. Trying to pin down exactly why Batman is such an entertaining character is really hard, but one thing that's for sure, some of his best moments and some of his best stories revolve around this, right? They're about his mind. Some of Batman's best moments are when he's fighting an enemy far more powerful than him, but by using his mind, not his fists, he outsmarts them and wins because of it. For example, in Justice League Crisis of Two Earths, Batman goes up against this woman who's essentially like an evil version of Wonder Woman. He stands no chance against her in a fist fight, but she's vain, she's toying with him rather than finishing him quickly. She beats him around a bunch, and he deploys a smoke bomb is coming to escape, and then she's all like, "Smoke? God, how great!" But then she inhales it all as a part of her toy with him with her incredible powers. But then after doing it, she sees that Batman's wearing a gas mask, and he says,
It's anesthetic gas.
and he capitalized on the fact that she was toying with him and used that to make her breathe in the gas, which took her out. Like, that's peak Batman right there. And it's such a fun scene. But what I think is one of Batman's best stories in this regard is a whole episode of the Justice League anime. In that episode, he gets captured by a gang of villains. And yes, I did just call it the Justice League anime because I knew that would piss some of you off. In that episode, he gets captured and he spends the whole time manipulating the villains while tied up. He brings up the fact that they're getting paid different amounts of money to make them fight each other, and he seduces Cheetah. Then one of the group betrays the Cabal and sabotages their plans. Then they check their security recordings, and sure enough, they see Cheetah kissing Batman. So then they're like, yeah guys, Cheetah's acting kind of sus. I think she's the imposter. Then they vote her out. But then it turns out that she wasn't the imposter, and that Batman had already convinced Ultra Humanite to betray them for a hefty fee, and he only seduced Cheetah because he knew that they'd find out about it. And he did it all to shift the suspicion onto her, so the real traitor among them, that was on Batman's side, could maintain their cover. And then it turns out that Batman could have escaped any time he likes, but he knew that if he broke out, they would all run away, so he stayed, pretending to be helpless so he could keep an eye on them and see what their plan was. And Batman obliterated this group by outsmarting the absolute shit out of them. And it makes for a brilliant showcase of his character and a thoroughly entertaining story. This right here, this is what I'm talking about. Batman being a genuine genius and outsmarting people far more powerful than him. It's one of the foundational pillars of his character. It's one of the reasons why he's so entertaining to follow. But look at Snyder's incarnation. Name one moment where he has deployed his cunning to truly outwit his foe. You can't, can you? Because there hasn't been one. The most clever thing he's done was hack into Luthor's network, discover the fact that he has kryptonite like her Superman, stole it, then use that to make weapons with it in the climax of the movie. That isn't exactly a moment of idiocy from Batman. It doesn't make him look stupid. But compared to the other moments where we see Batman's character shine in other fiction, right, where he has done some true 4D chess plays, where he's been an absolute genius, that is nothing. That is a parody of how clever Batman can really be. Seriously, Batman in BVS is moderately intelligent, right? He doesn't make any rookie mistakes, he's not an outright idiot, but he's barely shown to be more clever than your average guy. But Batman in Snyder's Justice League, he is an outright idiot. He makes some truly stupid decisions. Take this scene, for example. The scene where Superman is trying to kill the Justice League, and so then Batman walks out onto the field and stares Superman down. Seriously, what was going through Batman's head when he made that decision? But actually, you don't need to answer that question, because Zack Snyder gave me some exclusive footage that ended up on the cutting room floor, and it answers that very question. I hope you enjoy. Oh, bloody hell! Superman's completely lost his mind. He's become the monster I was always afraid he'd become. And now he's trying to kill the Flash. And the Flash never gave Clark a reason to hate him. I'm the one that nearly beat him to death that one time. And from Clark's perspective, that was only half an hour ago. If he so much as sees me, there's an incredible chance that he'll just kill me. It's a shame I don't have something like a kryptonite knuckle duster. Not enough to kill Superman, obviously, but enough to weaken him so the other leaders can restrain him and we can control the situation. That would have actually been a really good idea. It's a shame I'm absolutely terrible at having contingencies or eventualities like this, which totally isn't something my character is famous for. And also, I'm completely out of my element here. I have no powers, and there is nothing I can contribute towards that fight. Also, on top of that, Superman doesn't seem to understand the language right now, so I can't talk any sense into him. Truly, me walking out onto that field will only aggravate
There
him.
you go.
Therefore,
I
should save
remembered.
him and just let
I didn't
everything
map
play
it,
out.
but I remembered.
Right? Nah. What's the worst that could happen?
Hello.
Hey! Car!
My offense.
How have you been, mate? Like, so much has happened since that time I tried to murder you. How's the home planet? Still blown up, I trust.
I just realized Nuvobia and Umaga
Stop
reversed.
lasering me! It hurts! Time out! Time out! Who could have seen this one coming? Certainly not me. Everything about the way Batman handled Superman's resurrection is such a non-Batman way to do things. Batman has always been a genius tactician, even in the adaptations of him that deviate massively from the base character, and he is infamous for having contingencies for every eventuality, no matter how unlikely or absurd. Does this Batman have any contingencies in case this Superman turns out to have lost his mind and starts trying to kill people, which, as it turns out, is an incredibly rational fear, because that's what happens? No. Also, in other adaptations and depictions, Batman does a great job at leading the Justice League in the heat of battle, helping them enact their evil plan. In this film, in the Superman resurrection scene, does Batman do any of that? No. He doesn't lead at all. He doesn't even have a plan. All he does is walk out of a field, hope for the best, and then get lazy. So in the film Superman Batman Apocalypse, in the climax, Bruce confronts Darkseid and he defeats him by revealing that he's done the impossible, that he's hacked all of Darkseid's unhackable WLP, and he set the tool go off simultaneously. Like, if Darkseid doesn't back down and abandon his plans, his entire planet gets destroyed. And then Darkseid is all like, and then he beats him around a bunch, and then after he lets out his temper tantrum, Darkseid is like, and Batman faces down Darkseid, one of the most powerful villains in the whole DC multiverse, and he wins because he uses his genius influence. While other depictions of the character push Batman's wits to their absolute limits, and in doing so, have him outwit some of his universe's most powerful villains. Snyder's Justice League ends with Batman driving around in his car, effectively going, car with miniguns go. In the climax of Justice League, Batman doesn't use his brain at all. The only thing he uses are his fists, and it's such a total waste of the character. I know what some of you might be thinking. Batman's just not powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with Steppenwolf. There was nothing he could do to contribute towards that fight. Therefore, the fact he contributed almost nothing is perfectly fine. And to those people, I'd say that it's not just possible to keep hitting that big old punch-up with Steppenwolf when he fights him, but also on top of that, to give Batman a chance to really shine, to realise the full potential of his character, and as a result, to have made the climax of this movie so much more entertaining to follow. And I say that because that's exactly what I've done. Do stick around towards the end of this video to see my rewrite of the Justice League, because I want your watch time. I mean, you could just skip ahead now, and like there's nothing stopping you from doing that, I guess. Wait, don't! But alright, Batman's genius intellect is just one of the 4 things that makes him such a great character. So let's look at another one. Let's look at physical prowess.
Jesus Christ, this place sucks.
Yeah, Snyder's got that one down. Like, he did an incredible job, knocked out of the park. What more is there to say? So when it comes to Batman's resolve, there was one moment where Snyder hit the nail on the head and perfectly captured this aspect of the character. And it was this. This was in the Batman v Superman trailer, and at the time the world collectively reacted by thinking, oh my god, that is so badass, and it is such a Batman thing to do. And personally, when I saw this in the trailer, it got me hyped as hell because it implied that Snyder just got Batman's character. It hinted that this was going to be a great depiction of him. But whether or not it was, let's break this down. Why is this such a great Batman? It's because Batman, on top of his fighting skill and intellect, his character also shines when an obstacle comes along that defeats everyone else because they're not mentally strong enough or not determined enough, but he manages to overcome it purely because of his strength of will, because he is so goddamn tenacious. Like the fact that Bruce runs towards the terrifying threat that everyone else is running away from, it gives us a lovely glimpse into that aspect of his character. It is a brilliant moment, but there are two issues with it. For one, it's just a moment. Like, it's not a plot arc or a big meaty chunk of a story where this aspect of him is rigorously tested. It's just one moment. And the other issue, the fact that this is the only time in the entire DCEU that Batman's resolve has been properly showcased. So let's look at other Batman stories now and see how well they
Oh, cool.
A fantastic example of this in other media would be when Batman ascends Bane's Pit in The Dark Knight Rises. Like, it's the basis for a whole subplot of the movie. Like, a big deal is made out of the fact that no one has ever managed to make the climb, but Bruce tries and tries again and is shown to be cut above the rest. He becomes the first person to ever succeed in escaping, and it makes for a brilliant display of his resolve, and also his physical prowess at the same time. Like, another example, in the DC Comics, there's a character called Deadman, and he's basically a disembodied spirit who possesses people.
I didn't want those.
And even Superman at one point. And when he does it, he has total control over them. But when he tries to possess Batman, this happens.
Everything is what's got my stuff.
Like, he gets kicked out almost immediately because Batman's will is so strong. When anyone else in the Justice League gets possessed, you call the Exorcist. But when Batman gets possessed, like, don't sweat it because he can exorcise himself. Like, god damn it, that is peak Batman right there. Like, but admittedly, it is just one moment, like him running to the dust covers. But if you really want the perfect example, just the best depiction of Batman's resolve, for me, like, it has to be in Arkham. In that game, the Joker has infected several people with his blood, because of reasons that make no scientific sense whatsoever, but we'll give them a pass, it's a superhero story. Everyone who's been infected with the Joker's blood has had their consciousness gradually altered into the Joker's. And we see that Batman is holding on a lot longer than everyone else. Like, his willpower is letting him stave off the insanity for far longer than anyone else could. And that alone is a great display of his character, but it's still gradually progressing, and he can't hold it off indefinitely. So in the climax, and God, this is such a good climax, Batman is losing control, right? So he surrenders himself to Scarecrow just before the Joker takes full control of his body. And then all looks lost, right? Not only does the Scarecrow have Batman captured, but also the Joker's finally the one in control. And what a sad ending, or how very tragic. But, plot twist, Scarecrow then injects his fear toxin into Batman. But now, because Joker's the one in control, it's affecting the Joker's mind, not Batman. So then there's this whole sequence where we see the Joker's fears get realised.
You call me for fake. There is everyone.
The idea of everyone forgetting about him and him having no legacy, like, it terrifies him. And the Joker starts to lose control and act erratically, like the fear getting the better of him. And then Batman just uses the opportunity to absolutely dominate the Joker, and he bursts into the nightmare like, I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. And then he throws Joker into a cage in his mind and represses the Joker's psyche into a place where he'll never bother him again. And he takes full control of his body back in just this wonderful display of his mental strength. Arkham Knight is a flawed game, but at the same time, it's one of the best depictions of Batman's resolve I've ever seen. Like, it plays a major role in the story, it culminates in a really fun climax, and at the same time, it does a great job at displaying how intelligent Batman is for, like, coming up with that plan to defeat Joker, although again, we already have covered that point. But anyway, Bruce's taciturn willpower is a fundamental pillar of why he's so fun to follow in other depictions. But in the DCEU, this Batman has never gone up against a foe who wiped everyone else out because they weren't mentally strong enough. But when they went against Batman, he persevered, soldiered through when no one else could, and saved the day. Like, yes, that dust cowl moment was nice and all, but it was just one moment in a series of films. Like, when have we seen this Batman's resolve get tested? When have we seen it displayed? I mean, he hates Superman enough to lay out a plan to kill him, and then he follows through with it, so I guess he can stay focused on a task. At least we know he doesn't have ADHD. He also has like an exercise routine, I guess, and that counts as a kind of willpower. But that's all we get in terms of his resolve, and simply, it is nowhere close to being enough. But here's the thing, and this is leading toward the topic that I'm sure you've all been dying for me to cover. God knows most of the criminals Batman fights have, but when it comes to intellect and resolve, Snyder failed to depict those not just important, but vital aspects of Batman's character, and him doing that hugely compromises the entertainment value he can bring to the table. That's all true. But the problem with this final one is how Snyder didn't just neglect this quality unlike the others. He willfully disregarded it. That's right, buckle up boys, because Henry's finally talking about Batman's no-kill rule. This isn't going to be controversial, even slightly. So when it comes to the argument around Batman being a killer, it will almost always flow like this. Firstly, the critic will say, "You see, Batman never kills people, therefore this version of Batman sucks." And then the critic of that critic will say,
But Batman killed in other incarnations, and you loved those. Therefore, you are a hypocrite. And your criticism is invalid, sir.
and then they'll be all like,
You lose! Good day, sir!
what's the issue here? Well, the problem is that first critic failed to understand the heart of this problem, and because of that, what he says is really easy to shoot down because it wasn't really the truth. And what is the heart of this problem? Well, it's something that the Joker put really quite well.
You truly are incorruptible, aren't you?
People claim they hate this Batman because he kills people, but that's not precise enough, and it's not really the truth. A better way of putting it, right, is saying that Batman being someone of integrity is the final fundamental pillar of his character. It is a defining trait that makes him the man he is, and this Batman completely and utterly lacks that trait. But what's worth addressing here before we continue is that you 100% can alter a classic character's makeup when making some kind of adaptation about them. Snyder could have conceivably thrown Batman's integrity out of the window, and it could have worked well. A fantastic example of another piece of work that does something like this, and it works quite well, is in the Injustice series. In Injustice, Superman becomes a fully fledged murderer. He becomes completely evil. But don't you think it's curious that Superman in Injustice is far more than Batman in the Snyderverse, right? It's actually more of a deviation from the original character, yet almost no one complains about that depiction of Superman, while it feels like millions of comic book fans have been complaining about Snyder's depiction of Batman. Isn't that interesting? And there's a very good answer for why. It's because in Injustice, the core thesis of the story is posing the question, what would happen if Superman became a tyrant? The justification for warping the source material is pretty much as good as it gets, because the story is about Superman's descent. It's not just in the elevator pitch, it is the elevator pitch. Like, with Injustice, it would be truly impossible to not warp the character and still tell the same story, because the character being warped is the premise of that story, and as a result, it's a great reason for the deviation. As a result, the fans were happy with it. But what was Snyder's justification for warping Batman's integrity? From how he has no qualms about using guns, to how he shows no regard for the lives of his enemies and doesn't just kill people who are in his way. Like, he flat out murders people who he could have easily spared. Sorry, what's that, criminal? You're weaponless, defenseless, and I could easily knock you out with a single strike or swipe your feet out from under you? Let me do this instead. What was Snyder's reasoning for erasing Batman's integrity? Well, Snyder's thought process when he made this decision, it looks a lot like this. You know, I like movies with a dark, grim tone. I should make my superhero movies with a dark grim tone. That's it, yeah. And what could be more grim than killing people? Therefore, all of my superheroes need to be killers. Oh my god, that's it. I'm a genius. That's it. That is the entirety of the reasoning behind Snyder's creative choices. That is why Superman snaps Zod's neck, and it is why this Batman seems to be perfectly fine with murdering the criminals he comes across. And I know what some of you are typing in the comments right now. But Henry, this Batman's had a really tough life. His Robin's died. Therefore, it's fine for him to say such comedy gems as,
I will fucking kill you.
And for him to generally be a depraved murderer. To those people, that is a fundamentally flawed argument, because as the Joker again says,
You truly are incorruptible, aren't you?
integrity is one of the key traits that defines Batman's character, in the same way that him being a genius is, in the same way that him wearing a batsuit is, and over the years, so many incarnations have thrown so much at him, have really put him through hell, but throughout all of those, Batman still stays completely true to the man he is. Let's also not forget that in basically every modern Batman story, the Joker killing Jason Todd is canon. The Joker paralyzing Barbara Gordon is canon. So in pretty much every modern Batman story, not only is Robin already dead, but a laundry list of other horrible stuff has happened to Bruce. Yet despite that, he maintains his integrity. But now, in the DCEU, under the exact same conditions, he suddenly has no integrity? What explains the disparity? Well, there is only one possible conclusion. The disparity is
It's just you!
proof that on a fundamental level, Snyder's Batman and the classic Batman are completely different characters, because when presented with the exact same scenario in their backstory, they have both reacted in the entirely opposite way. And so much so that at this point it's not too hard to make a ship of Theseus argument and say that because this Batman is just so completely different from this Batman, you might be able to say that he shouldn't be called the ship of Theseus anymore. He shouldn't be called Batman because so much has been changed about him. But a fantastic example of Batman really being put through the ringer and having his integrity tested is again from Injustice. In that series, it's been made public that his name is Bruce Wayne. His assets and company have been taken away from him. Every single one of his old friends, every single member of the Justice League has either died or turned against him. Alfred is dead. Dick Grayson is dead. His son, Damian Wayne, has betrayed him and has joined Superman's regime. Absolutely everything that could go wrong with Batman's life, save for physical mutilation, has gone wrong. But despite all that, he stays completely true to his values, and that series is a wonderful showcase of his character. It does a wonderful job at adhering to that four cornerstone theory I mentioned earlier. And again, as a caveat, in some situations you can alter a character's key traits and it can work in an adaptation. But just like Injustice did, you need a really good reason for breaking the mold. You can't just rip out one of his most defining traits on a whim for no other reason than you feel like it. Okay, that's not actually fair, because the real reason why Snyder did this to Batman, but the only reason, was because he wanted to achieve a certain tone. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. Henry, that's just speculation. You don't know what was going through Snyder's head at the time. Well, unfortunately it's not, because Snyder all but confessed to it. There is a pretty infamous clip of him on a panel from a while back, and he said this.
And someone says to me like, oh, like, Batman killed a guy. I'm like, wake the fuck up. It's like, and then you come and say to me something about like, oh, my superhero wouldn't do that. I'm like, are you serious? It's a cool point of view to be like, my heroes are still innocent, you know? My heroes didn't fucking lie to America. My heroes didn't embezzle money from their corp. My heroes didn't commit any atrocities. I'm like, that's cool. but you're living in a fucking dream world, okay?
Snyder rambles a lot in that clip, so that's why it's got so many cuts. But Snyder's defense of why he made Batman a murderer, it isn't like Injustice, where he says that he had a very specific story in mind that regrettably required him corrupting the original character in order to tell that story, which would have been a far better thing for him to have said. Instead, his argument boils down to that the source material he is adapting is fundamentally stupid, which isn't a worrying thing for someone adapting something to say at all. Alright, it's really bad form when you're making these kind of videos to just say, hey, that's a stupid thing to say, and not actually address the argument. So let's address his argument. Snyder's main point boils down to that Batman as we know him is not realistic enough for his world, and that is a tremendously flawed belief, partly because of this. So Snyder is indirectly saying that Nolan's trilogy felt like it was in a dream world, that it just wasn't realistic enough. No, but also because Snyder believes that Batman simply must be a man without integrity, otherwise it's impossible to tell a dark story around him, and that is simply not true. Okay, let's give credit where it's due. Forgetting the corruption of the character, Snyder undeniably achieved his creative vision, right? He successfully succeeded in giving the story the grim tone he was going for. He has Batman calling in precision airstrikes on criminals like he's playing Call of Duty, and it effectively gives the story the grim tone he was set out to get. But the problem here is the aspect of the original character that he sacrificed in order to achieve his tonal goals was a completely unnecessary sacrifice. And this is a major controversial point, right? Many a heated conversation has been had in many a Twitter thread and many a YouTube comment section about exactly this. Some people will say that Snyder fundamentally doesn't understand Batman's character, and then the other people will vehemently disagree. But truthfully, this is solid proof that Snyder doesn't understand Batman's character, because if Snyder had understood him, he would have known that Batman already is the least innocent, the most realistic, and the single darkest superhero around already. Unless you count like Punisher and Spawn, maybe. But the thing is, Snyder has somehow got it into his head that a man having a moral code, that a man having any form of integrity, therefore makes him not a dark character. And that's nonsensical, right? Because so many wonderful Batman stories have been told, where he sticks religiously to his no-killing rule, yet still, that story has a thoroughly bleak, depressing tone. And yet also, Batman still comes across as totally believable. Out of the many examples out there, the game Arkham Origins pulls this off really quite well. Simply put, and this is going to be controversial, but at the same time, it's also the truth. When Snyder did this to Batman, he was either one of two things. He either A, didn't understand Batman's character, or B, was being lazy. Because you can easily, so very easily, bring out the darkness of Batman's character and succeed in achieving that goal of creating grim, gritty realism, while at the same time altering nothing about the base character. Because Batman is already a character that lends himself to that kind of story. Like, I swear, it's always odd how Batman, as he is, as the classic character, feels like a perfect fit for the Snyderverse already. As a metaphor, to get across what I'm saying, this is like putting up a shelving unit, right? The shelves are the grim tone that needs to be set up, the screws are Batman, and the builder is Zack Snyder. Now, what is worth saying here is that these screws are perfect for this job. The classic Batman character truly is perfect for this job. You couldn't ask for a better screw. And all Snyder had to do was deftly and delicately screw them in. All he had to do was take Batman's existing mental trauma, or the various moral dilemmas around his character, like, is it even ethical for him to arrest criminals and put them in prison knowing that they'll break out and kill someone else again? Batman, through his inactions, is indirectly killing people. Is that ethical? Like, there are a ton of potential angles Snyder could have taken with this. Snyder could have easily given us the best of both worlds, where the shelving unit is nice and sturdily put up, and the integrity of the screw, the integrity of Batman's integrity, is perfectly maintained. But unfortunately, Snyder didn't use a screwdriver for this job, perhaps because he didn't understand the nature of the screw well enough to know that the screwdriver was the tool of choice, or perhaps because it was out of reach, or it was just too much effort to use. We can only speculate about his reasoning, we can only guess, but what we do know for a fact is that it was at this point that Snyder instead grabbed the hammer and mercilessly beat that screw into the wall, warping the absolute shit out of it in the process. Now, yes, Snyder did successfully succeed in putting up the shelving units, but at the same time, he caused a tremendous amount of pointless, preventable collateral damage to the screw, to Batman's integrity. When an artist adapts some source material, they have every right to alter certain things about that source material if it gets in the way of their creative vision. However, Batman's integrity was not even remotely in the way of Snyder's creative vision. He didn't have a story that required Batman not having that characteristic in order to tell the plot he wanted to tell. And I say that because it will be dead easy to rewrite BVS, so Batman is way more true to the source.
All I had to do was go to the deep city. I was like, what if I enter from the labyrinth? I didn't say it out loud, I wish I did, but I'm just gonna enjoy this song for a bit. Okay, hold on. That's so fucking stupid! I actually have way too many backliners. Maybe Alma is best off being a frontliner. I mean, she can still be in the front. Oh my god! Alright, this OST is honestly banging. I don't mind that I've been an idiot. Because ultimately, I am mostly to blame. This should have been honestly really obvious. In hindsight, oh, what are those? They look kind of different from the rest. I'm already missing Rocket Engine. It's only for a bit. How can I get to that submagnetic pole? I want it. Nay, I need it. Oh ho ho ho! A flame fruit, you say? A moss strawberry, you say? What? Oh, the battle music's different! Yes! I love it! Okay, wow, we're dying. I'm guessing they're really weak to blunt attacks. I have PTSD from enemies that look like eggs now, thanks to a certain game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the enemies here might be weak to ice as well. Guys, just a guess. Wow, Tails heals really good. Sasuga. Oh, nice, I found the... Oh yeah, this sucks. Honestly, I wish I brought the other character instead who had Victory March level 3 instead of Mara. Whatever. Just a bit of fighting. Oh, this is a secret. Cool. What the hell makes this different from the rest of the walls? What? Ah, fuck. How did I do that? I think it's a good goal to try getting to the submagnetic pole. That's the stopping point.
Material still has its integrity, but fundamentally the exact same plot plays out.
This is a very good visual aesthetic. I like it. You don't see this kind of aesthetic a lot in a classical dungeon RPG like this.
And because of that, what he did was therefore a bad creative decision. Injustice is a story that warps its character, and it has a flawless excuse for doing so. The Snyderverse warps its character, and it has a flimsy excuse for doing so, and that is why the DC fandom has almost collectively loved the Injustice series, and why they were far, far less inclined to love the depiction of Batman in the Snyderverse. And what makes this even worse is that even if Snyder had an Injustice-level excuse for doing what he did to Batman, like even then, because Snyder failed to depict Batman's intelligence.
I guess now that everyone can subclass into a monk, they're more willing to force more healing out of you. So I do think you can get away without healing in the beginning.
And so even with a top-tier justification, like he would have never come across as Batman, the genius detective who has a superhuman willpower and an incorruptible integrity. Like he instead comes across as a brute who has a lot of fancy gadgets and is very good at punching things. Now those are all things that Batman is, but this is ultimately why Snyder's Batman was such a waste of potential and such a subpar incarnation. Because while he did tick off some of the boxes in the criteria, while he did get some of the things right, he failed to tick the majority of the boxes that actually mattered. Let's also not forget that Batman being someone of integrity doesn't make him a less entertaining character, it actually makes him a more entertaining character. Like Batman having his code provides an extra layer of depth to him, it makes him more likable. It is another way for the writer to give him compelling conflict internally as he debates whether he's right or wrong, and externally as him choosing to spare those he fights only makes his existing friends into his enemies, and makes him more of an underdog where the odds are even more stacked against him because of the lines he refuses to cross. Batman's integrity is a quality of his character that is nothing but an asset to any prospective writer looking to write his story. And that just makes Snyder depriving this incarnation of that quality all the more inexcusable. Simply, in the DCEU, but especially in Snyder's Justice League, Batman's character screams untapped potential. And speaking of which, the time has finally come. Here is my vision of what a better Batman could have looked like. So in this section, I'll be rewriting Batman in both BVS and Justice League. The thing is, right, I had an idea for a complete plot overhaul of Batman v Superman, where I basically changed everything about it except for the fact that Batman and Superman...
Hello again. I'm here on the Abyssal King's orders. I must explain about this labyrinth to you. We are in the lowest point of the deep city. Further underground lies the cavern. It has existed since ages past. The point beyond this cavern is connected to the abyss. Need to check the recording real quick. It's a little too late, but... You will struggle against both monsters and the intense heat of the submarine volcano. Yeah, already have been. Thanks for explaining something that's redundant information now, Olympia. If you just want me to suffer and that you hate me, just say it. It is dangerous, but you are no stranger to peril now. There should be nothing to fear. We'll speak again once you reach the 10th floor. Yeah, my current goal right now though is the submagnetic pole, which is kindly shown in the... Ooh, it's a flame lynx. I wonder what they could be weak to. Ouch. Why is no one targeting V3? Okay, a Zodiac subclassing as a monk is actually overpowered? Oh, sure, already worked. Oh, never mind. Stun works like in Pokemon. It's a chance to skip the turn. Dang it, Lobobi, you missed ES. Yeah, TP is seriously not a problem as long as you have Blood Return. I honestly think it's a little too overpowered. I thought Blood Return would consume more HP than it does, but it's honestly not that big of a deal. If they are still gonna continue doing balance updates, well, first of all, I'd like them to make the overworld skills cost TP again, and also to nerf Blood Return, make it cost more HP. Maybe make it harder to get, so I don't just rush to get it as soon as possible. A bit ironic though that battles are a lot safer than Eosra should hybridize more in healing. Mara can continue attacking. I was expecting the Flame Lynx to be a killer threat, but no. You're joking me. Alright, I'm out of here. Apparently there's a non-disclosure agreement. So no. I'm afraid I can't do that, John. Yeah, Alma ain't half bad as a frontliner. That doesn't mean giving her a gun was a terrible idea. It's just like V3 who can also be in the front line anyways. She's liquid.
And are the main characters, but I chose to be far less ambitious and just rewrite Batman's role in the original BVS and nothing more. This isn't a joke, right? Normally when we pretentious video essayists say all you had to do was change this one thing, and all of a sudden the movie becomes a masterpiece and entirely fixed, it's like a massive
the things that sell there are
With BVS, like, you could entirely fix Batman's character by changing one thing about him, and it's this. This Batman has never killed anyone before in his life, and the film is about Batman contemplating breaking that rule for Superman. There is nowhere on Earth where Clark could be held if he went rogue. Like, detaining him truly is impossible, and killing him, it truly is the only way to take him out. And the film is about Batman dealing with that dilemma, that something has to be compromised. The safety of the world, or himself and his integrity. Like, one of those things has to go, and Bruce has to decide. Oh, bruh, I'm just pulling your leg, guys. I can't. Look, it's impossible to fix Batman vs Superman with like one change like that. And you guys all know that I have no self-control when it comes to these kinds of things. Here is my pitch for a fundamentally different Batman v Superman, in which I do my best not just to fix Batman, but also everything else while I'm at it, because why not? So in this new story, I want to turn this Batman into not just a loyal incarnation of the character, but also a compelling character in his own right, with his own functional arc. Here's the problem. Batman's arc in the original BVS, for lack of a better term, is big dog keep
Are you
doing
kidding
it.
me?
It sucks, basically, right?
What?
It does an awful job at setting him up for the Justice League. If we track Batman's arc from start to finish in that
A new
film,
weapon
it
for
would
the
look like
farmers?
this. I hate
That's crazy.
Superman. Oh, I hate Superman. I still hate Superman. Oh, I hate that man so much. Big climactic fight. Martha! Huh. I guess I don't hate Superman anymore. 10 minutes of brainless action later. You know what? I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna start.
I'd be hard pressed to believe
Don't get
anyone
me wrong,
else is going
Batman
to
saying
give
I want
gossip.
to start a team at the end of that movie.
Looks like I'm on my own
Justice
from
League
now
was
on,
something
huh?
he absolutely had to say. But this is weak sauce. This is nowhere close to the best way Batman's character could have reached that end point. And here's what I think is a far better approach. This film shouldn't have been called Batman v Superman, but something more along the lines of Batman and Superman. And hear me out, right, just hear me out. This film really should have been, I can't believe I'm saying this, a buddy cop movie. I know, get your laughing out of the way, but I seriously think that giving this movie the same formula as a buddy cop movie such as Lethal Weapon would be the best possible way to tell a joint Batman-Superman story and to lay the foundation for the Justice League. But okay, well, what would such a story have looked like? Well, we start following a van rushing through the street in the dead of night.
So
Everyone's wearing a mask and they're all acting terrified. They're asking each other if they've lost him, and after looking out the back, making sure to look at the rooftops as well as the street level. They say that no one's following them. So they stop outside the docks and go to meet a small ship that's just arrived. And it's at this point that the criminals start disappearing one by one. And the whole thing is filmed as if it's like a horror film, with criminals vanishing all over the place in grisly, gory ways. Like, imagine a fight scene from the Arkham games, except you don't follow Batman, you follow the criminals trying to survive him. Then there's a grand explosion, and Batman leaps forth, and we have a grand action scene on the same level as that warehouse fight, where he beats the hell out of all these criminals and we introduce his character for the first time. But soon enough, a second boat arrives with a mounted machine gun. It gives Bruce a lot of trouble. He's really pinned down, and he calls in the Batwing. But just before he can do anything, before the fight can resolve, Superman suddenly comes along and takes them all out for him. So then, once the criminals are all tied up, Batman's on his own, brooding as he's sifting through the shipping crates, looking at what they were trying to smuggle, when Superman walks up to him and says, "Oh, you must be the Batman." Silence. "It's good to finally meet you," says Clark as he reaches out to shake his hand. Then Batman just looks at his hand, looks at Clark's face, then goes back to sifting through the crates. Batman grabs one of the boxes from inside and turns to Superman, saying, "Stay out of Gotham. It already has one protector, it doesn't need another." It's at this point that Superman starts wincing. He's looking sick and he's sweating. But then the police finally arrive. Superman looks at them, and by the time he turns back, Batman's already grappled up to his Batwing and he's in the middle of flying away. In the first act of this story, we set up that Superman's getting serious with Lois. Maybe he's even proposing to her. And he's still as Superman-y as ever as he's doing noble deeds and saving cats from the trees and the like. And in this scene, he says to Lois that he met Batman the other day and that Batman wasn't remotely interested in speaking to him. And we introduced the idea that Superman really wants Batman as an ally, like maybe even a friend, because outside of Lois, Clark doesn't have anyone to work with or confide in. We also